Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 28th of June 2016. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comments. Coming up in the show, Twitch introduces the cheering system, which consists of a micro-donation currency called bits. All this in the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. Twitch has introduced what it calls cheering, which is essentially the art of the micro-donation. This is done via the purchase of a virtual currency called bits, which is directly translated into dollars upon donating to the streamer itself. It is, however, not called a donation, it is called cheering a streamer for whatever reason, and it will display various animated emoticons as well as give a chat badge to those that have given a certain number of these so-called bits. The system is currently in a limited beta for select invited channels and is expected to roll out in full across the platform over the next few months. Now, this has caused confusion amongst quite a few people, as well as some anger here and there, as every decision ever always does. But I'd like to spend a little bit of time breaking this down, because this system seems weird to some people, but those people are very much not familiar with the way that an awful lot of non-United States streaming services actually operate. Now, this virtual currency bits is essentially identical to many virtual currencies used on different streaming sites, including the massive South Korean streaming site Afrika, which is used for both game streams as well as various pieces of reality content, including the rather interesting mukbang, which is basically eating in front of a stream. This service has been around for a very long time and has also included a system by the name of balloons. This is exactly the same as the bit system that is being introduced to Twitch, and it is a virtual currency micro donation system. The point being, you buy a pack of balloons, which usually involves a fairly large number of these things, and then you can donate a certain number of them to a streamer via a simple button click in the stream's actual interface. Now, what this does is it deducts the number of balloons from your account, and that is then translated to real money for the streamer, depending on what the exchange rate happens to be. Now, you might be asking, well, why exactly would Twitch implement something like this? You know, what's wrong with just giving money by PayPal? Well, there are, of course, a few reasons, some of which are obvious, some not so much. I like to talk about the upsides and downsides of a system like this and really encourage people to think about it, because I see knee-jerk reactions to implementations such as this all the time. You know, YouTube Red got blasted by not only users, but also YouTubers, which was basically the equivalent of shooting yourself in the foot, because YouTube Red has, as I said when it first launched, proven to be very good for the vast majority of YouTube users, and really anyone that had actually done the numbers on it for more than 2 minutes as a YouTube partner would have figured that out from the start. So it would be nice if we didn't have another giant internet tantrum, and just calm it down, have a think about it. Okay, so the obvious reason why Twitch is doing this is because up until now, the donation market, as it were, has been absolutely massive and done through a third-party service that Twitch cannot touch. It should not be in any way surprising that Twitch would like a piece of that particular pie. Now, you might think, well, that's greedy of Twitch. They're not entitled to that money. I'm giving money to the streamer. I'm not giving money to Twitch. Well, you can make that argument, absolutely, that a personal donation is not necessarily something that Twitch should really be getting their mitts on. But you also have to bear in mind a few things. Now, Twitch is providing the infrastructure and the bandwidth in order for these streams to even exist to begin with, and that is a very, very expensive operation. There is a reason why there aren't too many streaming services available, and the ones that are competing with Twitch are generally not that good. They're not performing as well as Twitch. They don't have the feature set of Twitch. And that's because actually creating a streaming service that deals with that amount of bandwidth on a regular basis that's reliable for people is incredibly difficult. In the same vein, there's a reason why there aren't many competitors to YouTube, because it's very, very expensive, and it's only recently that YouTube started to turn a profit, and there are indications that that doesn't happen on a year-by-year basis. They were losing money for like a decade. So it makes sense that Twitch would like a little piece of that, because really you are using their platform and you're using their bandwidth in order to do things. Now, I'd like to point out, by the way, that YouTube also takes a percentage, a fairly significant percentage, of all ad revenue that comes through their platform. That's what I like to tell people every time somebody says, oh, you can't complain about YouTube because it's free. It might be free for you as the user. It's not free for those of us that are partners. They take a chunk of our revenue, and it's a pretty big one, too. Now, you're going to now say, well, it's not ad revenue, though. It's not the same thing. You're right. It absolutely is not exactly the same as ad revenue. It's obvious that the providers should be taking a cut of that. But when it comes to donations, the thing you got to bear in mind is that an increasing number of Twitch streamers have stopped running ads at all. And the reason for that is that they're just not getting a worthwhile return on it, and they feel that it's actually better not to run ads and keep viewers as opposed to running ads and potentially making viewers leave. Because every time you run an ad break, and I know this because I watch it happen live on the stats, you will get a viewer drop. Because some people just kind of tune out at that point. Because either they just don't want to see an ad, or they're like, ads, especially if it's more than one ad run back to back, they decide, screw it, I'm out of here. This is particularly true when you have viewers that just sort of jump from channel to channel. They'll watch for a bit, but when they see an ad, they're like, all right, that's the cue for me to get the hell out of here. So it's understandable that streamers wouldn't run them if they're not really worth their time. The thing about ads is that it's not necessarily the case that ads just don't pay enough. It's down to the fact that in order for ad-supported businesses to really work, they've got to display a fairly large volume of ads. An individual ad view is worth almost nothing. The way that you really make money is by displaying thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of ads. That's when you can actually make decent money on it. The prevalence of so-called ad blocking software has also severely hurt almost every business on the planet, which is reliant on ad-supported revenue, forcing many of them to go down a more premium model, directly asking their customers for money, which, at least in my eyes, is not as good as letting everybody watch it for free. So if you're thinking about killing the ad-supported business model, you better damn well have a better replacement for it, because unfortunately I don't think there really is one. One way or the other, when you think about it, ads do pay relatively well, but not if you're not showing them to enough people. And the vast majority of Twitch streamers do not have enough concurrent viewers to make any real money on ads whatsoever, even if they run quite a lot of them. And of course, the more of them they run, the more people they piss off. Not exactly ideal. There's only a small percentage of channels that can really get by through an ad-supported business model. The vast majority of them can't. So what's happened is that most people have gone to either a subscription-based or donation-based business model. And I don't even know if you can call donations a business model. I personally don't view it as a business model. I mean, it really is something that only charities rely on. And it's not a reliable form of income anyway. I would never recommend to anybody that they base their livelihood on donations. It's not at all sustainable. It's incredibly financially risky, but we see that the majority of streamers need to do that because they're not monetizing in other ways. They're not getting good sponsorships. They're not properly monetizing their stream in terms of a good subscription model. They're not putting out enough merchandise or making the kind of deals that would keep you going. They're not diversifying their revenue streams. They're not really running it like a business. Regardless, as I said, we have a lot of streams relying on donations, and Twitch is saying, hang on a minute, we're hosting this stream, we're paying for your stream to exist, and yet you're not running ads, so we're not really getting a lot out of it. So we notice that you're getting all your money through a third-party system, you're dodging our methods of monetization, so we would like a piece of that pie, please. And so far, they have not cracked down on external donations, and I frankly do not expect them to. I think that's PR suicide. What they have instead decided to do is to put a competing service into the UI itself, and to use the Amazon payment system in order to do it. Now, the biggest concern in my eyes about this is that Twitch has not publicly said what the split is between them and the broadcaster. If the split is too high in Twitch's favor, you're going to see a lot of broadcasters rebelling against this because they see it as competition to their donations, which they get the vast majority of after PayPal fees. Now, it's not that they get 100% of the money, that's never the case, but they do get the vast majority of it. So if Twitch's cut is significant, then some partners are going to turn around and say, well, why the hell would I want this system to exist? That's undercutting me. That's providing an option which is actually getting me less money. What I would say about this is that while it's a valid concern, and I certainly encourage Twitch, I would implore them to publicly release those numbers and also provide a fair split for everybody, What I will say is that I think it's a bit short-sighted to dismiss this system out of hand, because there are a number of advantages to the micro-donation model. So let me go through what those are. The most significant advantage to the micro-donation model is the fact that purchasing a large amount of this virtual currency allows you to then dole it out in small chunks without a service like PayPal eating it with fees. As it stands, a micro-donation at the moment through PayPal is useless, because PayPal charges both a percentage-based transaction fee and a flat transaction fee. So if you throw 20 cents at somebody, they're not going to get it. It's going to be eaten by fees. So there's nothing left at the end of that. And you might think, 20-cent donation isn't particularly generous. You're right, but they add up in a big way. You can get a lot of people throwing a small amount of money at you, or you can get a small number of people throwing fairly significant chunks at you. It also encourages a massive amount of regularity. You'll get regular donations from the same people multiple times per day if they happen to have like 1,000 or 10,000 of whatever this virtual currency bits actually is. It's effectively volume-based crowdfunding. It's a case of getting a huge amount of small donations as opposed to a small amount of large donations. That is why there is a virtual currency, as it were. That's why they didn't just implement a donate X amount of money, because it makes more sense to have people sort of buy their donation currency in bulk. It minimizes the fees, it minimizes the transaction and credit card costs of doing so, and then those costs are not at any point transferred on to the Twitch streamer themselves. Although, as I mentioned, considering Twitch takes a cut, there is a different cost that is incurred as well. Now, another benefit to this is that it encourages a particular trend of behavior that we've seen on Twitch channels over the past few years, the idea of the donation or sub train. This is a situation in which enough donations or subscriptions are given to a streamer that it causes a chain reaction of people doing the same thing. They are encouraged to do it because they saw everybody else do it. It's something of a mob mentality, but directed in a positive and very lucrative way. I think Twitch realizes this and wants to directly encourage this kind of behavior, and the way that they're doing that is by having these donations announced and shown with shiny animated icons in the chat. So they're hoping for a bunch of people to contribute to that, and it's more likely to happen if you're able to do so with a micro payment as opposed to any significant form of currency. It's a very odd part of Twitch culture that's very difficult to explain to people that aren't involved in Twitch, but it is something that happens, and it's certainly core, I think, to Twitch's continued philosophy of fostering this so-called chat community, which more often than not results in some pretty awful chats, I have to say, but Twitch has a unique culture, something, again, that's difficult to explain to people, and it looks like they are trying to continue to foster that, and of course figure out ways to monetize it. Now, another benefit to a system like this would be that it removes the amount of steps it takes to donate to a streamer. You integrate this directly into the UI, you do everything through Twitch's site. Not only is that potentially safer than clicking on an external link, but you also make it more convenient, and the less steps there are, the more likely people are to do it, and that's especially the case when you've already put the money into the system in some way. Have you noticed how it can be a lot easier to spend like Steam wallet funds than it would be to go in with no wallet funds and have to go through the credit card process? It's faster, and it's almost like it hurts less, because that money is already there, so spending it almost doesn't feel like you're spending it. It's a little bit of psychological manipulation, but it can be fairly effective. Now, while I think there is a real concern about this service cannibalizing regular donations, you could also argue that the service may open up a new market of those that were not willing to donate prior to that. People that maybe don't have a PayPal account, for instance. People that don't want to use PayPal. People that don't want to donate like $5 as a minimum. People that just want to toss like 10 cents every time a cool thing happens. And you would be surprised how quickly that could add up. It may very well cannibalize the existing donation system, but as it stands, Twitch has taken no steps yet to try and curb that. And again, I don't think they will, because that would cause a humongous PR backlash. What they've done to some degree is gamify the system, And you can argue that, yes, that is a little bit psychologically manipulative. Absolutely. That's what gamification is. It's deliberately designed to manipulate people into being more willing to participate in the system. But that can specifically also be beneficial to a streamer. So I would encourage streamers to not get too worried about it as of yet. But again, I implore Twitch to be very public about the split between them and the broadcaster. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up outside of investigating it was also to talk a little bit about the idea that donation culture on Twitch is a symptom of just how unviable it actually is to be a full-time streamer, to actually run a business through a streaming service. And one of those main reasons is that the vast majority of streamers don't have enough concurrent viewers to push out enough ads to make a reasonable amount of money. It's not that ads are bad, it's not that the CPM, that being the amount that you get paid per 1,000 impressions, is bad. It's just that you don't have enough concurrence for it to matter. Like, if you've got like 200, 300 viewers, and you push out an ad to all 300 of those viewers, that's basically worthless. You know, if you haven't gone and negotiated a real sponsorship, something that you have done yourself, you've gone to a company, you've got a contract down, you have picked a specific product that's very appealing to your audience, highly targeted endorsement-based advertising, then no, it's not going to make you a good amount of money. And as a streamer, you do have to go out of your way to actually go and negotiate that rather than relying on automated ads. Automated ads are never going to be the best solution, regardless of where you are. The thing is, even with that, it can still be difficult to make a living with a small number of viewers. So, of course, donations have become the way that many of these streamers have survived. And it's very much an artificial lifeline in my eyes. Bear in mind, we run a business, an officially registered company. We have employees, we have a financial advisor, we have a bookkeeper, we have multiple forms of revenue, sponsorships, merchandise, all sorts of things in place. You know, real contracts, real agreements. You know, we run like a business. So for us, the idea of taking donations as a primary form of revenue is not the sort of thing that we would do, because it's not reliable. It's that simple. And you need to be able to reliably predict what your income's going to be if you're going to properly budget. That's not the case with just a business. That's the case of everybody ever. You've got to be able to do that. You can't just rely on imaginary income that may or may not appear. There's a reason why Patreon has taken off in the way that it has. You know, you might think there's no difference between a donation and a Patreon. There actually is a big difference, and that difference is a monthly commitment, the regularity. It's pseudo-predictable. Not completely predictable, of course, because people can drop their subscription anytime, or you can end up getting more just out of nowhere. But it's a lot better knowing that around X number of people are going to give X amount of dollars every month, as opposed to saying, oh, I wonder if someone will donate a chunk of change to me today. And then it doesn't happen. It's like, oh, well, I don't have any income. That's not good. I would absolutely not encourage any streamer to rely on donations in any way. But there are plenty who have gone out of their way to incorporate it into their business model, and they spend a good chunk of the time on the stream encouraging people to donate and giving them shout-outs and giving them a sort of a level of engagement, which, don't take this the wrong way, but that is really similar to how porn cam sites work. It is effectively the same business model. You are giving somebody attention for money. Obviously, you're not taking your clothes off. Well, most Twitch streamers are not taking their clothes off. You know who you are. But it's exactly the same principle. And I don't think it's a particularly reliable form of income, and frankly, it's also somewhat disrespectful to the game. I don't really like it when somebody uses a game as nothing but background window dressing for asking for money. I don't think that's a good way of doing business. I think that's a good way of getting publishers and developers to stop siding with you, to start saying, hey, that's our intellectual property. What are you doing? You're using us as a glorified billboard to solicit donations. That's not reasonable. I do think game streams and game videos should be primarily focused on the game. There's a reason I don't run Facecam and all sorts of things like that, but that's a personal preference. That's not a rule that applies to everybody. There are many different ways to skin a cat, and there are obviously not only streamers that think that it's okay, but their viewers do as well. And how can I argue against that? You know, you watch what you want to watch. It's entirely up to you. Ultimately, though, the amount of concern that there seems to be over this announced system is very indicative of the fact that most streamers do not have a sustainable, reliable business model. What they have is, for all intents and purposes, a charity. And you might say, well, it's similar to tipping your waitress. Well, no, it's not, because waiters and waitresses are paid a salary. It's not a very good salary. It's a bloody frickin' terrible salary in the United States. There's no doubt about that. And I find tipping culture, frankly, to be pretty awful. You know, wage slavery for the most part. But regardless of that, they are still paid a wage. A streamer is not paid a wage. Twitch doesn't pay a wage. There's no guaranteed income there. The only similarity between the two is that they're both, in theory, appreciation for a job well done. So my conclusion on that, well, I think the system is a good thing. I think that giving an option to the viewers to show their appreciation in an official capacity is fine. I'm kind of surprised that it didn't appear already, and I'm also not surprised that it appeared in this form, because as I said, this is in no way an uncommon system for sites like this. It's just that those in the West might not be familiar with it because it's primarily an Asian thing. Twitch should absolutely be 100% transparent with the split and absolutely clear as to how this business model works. There are tons of rumors flying around, tons of misinformation. There are people even saying that Twitch doesn't take any split, which is frankly false as far as I know. We need to know these things. People that are giving money to the system saying, hey, I want to give some money to a streamer, should be entitled to know how much of that money is going to them and how much of that money is disappearing to Twitch. It is really that simple. All right, folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch. But before I go, I'd like to give you the OC remix track of the day. One of the most remixed tracks from the Street Fighter 2 soundtrack is, of course, Ryu's theme, no doubt about that. And there are tons of really great interpretations. This is one of the newest ones, and it is remixed by Niblix. The original composer for the theme is, of course, Asao Abe and Yoko Shimomura. I particularly like some of the electronic samples that are used in this. It's got a really nice beat to it. It's got a very nice crisp sound, and it goes by the name of The Path to Heaven, a remix from Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior. You can download it for free in the description below this video, and I'll see you next time.